Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Elysabeth Alfano. I'm the founder of Plant Powered Consulting. Thank you to the Foodeshow for having me and to Huda for having me as well. It's great to be here. Some of you might know me because I host something called the Plant-Based Business Hour. I also host the Plant-Based Business Minute and the Plant-Based Business Breakfast on Clubhouse. The Plant-Based Business Minute is on LinkedIn. So I do a lot with press, and usually it's press that brings people to me at my Plant Powered Consulting. So today I'm going to talk about the 5 mistakes not to make that I see all the time when people deal with press. I not only do press myself for my clients, but I'm also managing director of North America for Vegconomist. So I receive a lot of press releases. So I do a lot of press releases, I do a lot of press strategy, and I see a lot of press come my way. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we can see all the things that no, you don't want to do, and you'd be amazed. I see these mistakes for small plant-based companies and large corporations. So here we go. Let me share my screen. Okay, so you should be able to see there, I think. Let me do a thing here and get to slideshow. Oh, my dear. So sorry, everybody. Let me show you play from start. Okay. So here we have it, your top 5 mistakes when dealing with the press. Oh, and that is the top 5 mistakes not to make. So, okay, first a little bit about me. Again, I have Plant Powered Consulting. I started my career with the Kellogg Corporation. I was on Special K and Mini Wheat, so I started as consumer packaged goods brand marketing. Then I moved to having my own company, doing all my own press. From there, I moved to investing. And when I was an investor, I found that, oh gosh, you have a lot of time as an investor compared to an entrepreneur who's working 24/7. So I started doing journalism on radio and television, talking about the things that were important to me. And that journalism, which I didn't go to school for, I went for an MBA, but that journalism kind of stayed as a parallel career for me. And so now with Plant Powered Consulting, I do press strategy, marketing strategy, overall business strategy for brands. Again, having had my own company, investing, and then also working in consumer packaged goods. Now that I personally am vegan, I have shifted all of my business skill sets and my journalistic skill sets to helping either plant-based brands or large multinationals navigate the plant-based landscape. I love animals, I love nature, and oh my gosh, I love cooking, of course, because food is life, as we know. So, okay, just got that out of the way. Let's talk about tip number 1, not to do with the press. It's not about you. I know you think it's about you because you've got the big news and you've got the press release that you want to drop. But actually, journalism, as we know, really doesn't make any money. So, the people that you're talking to, they are very stretched thin. They don't have a big team. They don't have a lot of time. They don't have a lot of help. Their inboxes are jam-packed. Whoops, so sorry there. Their boxes are jam-packed. And usually, if you're in journalism, it's not because you're making the big bucks. So try to think about the person you're sending the press release to and what they really need to make their life easy so they can make those headlines and those deadlines. You do have to make it easy for them. Okay, so think about who you're sending that press release to. And then now that you have that person in mind who's very stressed out and stretched very thin, come prepared. I can't tell you how many people reach out to me on behalf of Vegconomist and say, hey, I'd love for a feature on Vegconomist magazine. I don't have a press release. I haven't really thought about what the feature would be about. I don't really have any great big news or a synopsis for you, but I just thought you might want to do a story on me because I'm a plant-based brand. It's not enough. You have to be much more prepared than this. So this is why people do work with PR consultants and why so many people come to me. You can do your press yourself. And we're going to talk about the top 10 tips for doing your own press release. You can do your press release yourself, but it takes time and it's supposed to work together as part of a much larger strategy. And it's great to have relationships with the press. So if you feel that you don't have time to be prepared and really work out that press release and work out the strategy and form those relationships with those journalists to make their lives easy, then you might want to look into public relations. Okay. So now that you know who you're sending it to and that you're going to be prepared, here's what you do to be prepared. So here we're talking about the top 10 tips I'm going to give you for writing your press release. Okay. Let's see if I can pull up the thing. Okay. So the first thing you want to have on your press release is a release date and contact info. It's going to look like this. Okay, so I can't tell you how many people send me releases and then I have no one to contact. So if I have any questions or what have you, I can't find them. They also often forget their own logo. So I just don't know how to say that. So, okay. And then you want the date. So it's for immediate release because sometimes you embargo information and you don't want to release it until your product is on the shelf. Wouldn't that be a shame if you put out your press release, but your product isn't there yet? So, for immediate release, on top, your contact information, your logo, and the release date that the press is allowed to talk about it. Okay. Catchy headline. This really helps. I mean, we talk about making somebody's life easy. I'll boil it down to this. This is really the most important thing. They want a catchy headline. New year, new career. This campaign that I did for this client, their website went up 5,000% in one day. We were picked up by TV stations across the nation. We had been in publications across the nation, radio shows as well, but a lot of, The Beat, Veg Economist, obviously I work with Veg Economist, but publications all over across the nation. So this was a really powerful campaign because it was timely. We were working into the new year and it was short and pithy and very easy for the press to say, oh, that's an easy headline. That's going to get me clicks. Again, we talked about knowing who you are sending your releases to. So you want to have them in mind. They have deadlines and headlines. They have to get those clicks. That story that they're writing on you has to sell. So you want to make that easy for them. That's tip number 2. Number 3, I get so many releases that are without personality. So they're just facts. On December 17th, we launched a product. It landed in the grocery store. It sells for $4.99. It's plant-based. Just so nothing exciting about that. So you really want to give your release, and you only have 400 or 500 words. You really want to give your release some personality, some passion, some humanity. So it's always great to have a quote from the founder. And here you have, passion placement grew out of my frustration as a financial professional looking to apply my own career skills to helping animals, improving life on the planet, only to find myself jumping from one site to another, back and forth, thinking, gosh, there's got to be a better way. So, that kind of just adds personality to it. So another good point. Okay. You also want to have a quote or comment, same thing, from someone who is independent of your company. So, of course, the founder is going to have a quote and she's going to be very biased about her own company. So it's nice to have someone else who has used your services or your product and have them talk about taste or convenience or how this changed their life or some kind of relevant data that makes this, again, rounds out the story. So it's more than just product arrived, it's $4.99. And that's all there is to it. That's kind of boring for people. So ultimately, like we said, we're trying to get headlines seen with lots of clicks and lots of visibility. So that's what's important to these journalists. Moving on, I cannot tell you how many people have sent me a press release and it doesn't have their own link to their website. And of course, often you'll see right here, it's not highlighted in yellow, but the Instagram tag is there as well, or a link to LinkedIn or whatever is important to your company. But I can't tell you how many people don't have this information. And so as we talk about, now we're talking about the top 10 things to do in a press release. But as I started this presentation saying, okay, I'm going to run down the things not to do. One of the things is to not be prepared and not have all the details together. And when someone forgets to put in their own website, I would say that they don't have all the details together. And You also want to have, of course, your company bio. So that usually comes about at the bottom of the press release. I can show you that later as well. So you've got to have information so that people can access and see for themselves, and also that company bio. So again, you've got the bio and the headshot here. This is it's cut off a little bit, but this is a paragraph on I want to go back here for a second. Oops. Yeah. Okay. So about Passion Place, we've got the website, and this is the paragraph about the company information, and bio. So, um, okay. I don't know how many times I can tell people you need to put in photographs. Again, we're talking about rounding out a press release so it's not boring. So you want to see that face behind the company. So of course there has to be headshots of the founders. And I get a lot of pushback on this. People saying like, well, I don't have a perfect headshot, or I don't look very good, or it's not about me. But ultimately, life is about people. It's not about products. It is about people. So you always want to give that touch of humanity. And the logo and any food shots, all of that needs to be in a Dropbox folder with a link so that the journalists don't have to struggle. I'll tell you the first thing that will make them take your press release and put it in the delete bin is that if you're going to make them do extra work, there just clearly isn't enough time for digital magazines. We'll talk about the exception to that rule, but for digital magazines, again, there's just not the staff to kind of look for the pictures that really should be supplied with the press release. Okay, so this is kind of the whole press release, how it looks as a whoops. Well, how did that happen? How it looks as a whole. So just your logo for immediate release, your contact information, a catchy title, again, your date here and your place, a nice quote from the founder that talks about why it's important to them and their mission, something that thought I had here. I think I just maybe skipped over it, but you see how I've broken up the paragraphs with a subheader. Subheaders really help so that, again, you keep the pace of the story going. Your story is only going to be 400 or 500 words, but who's got the patience in our ADD world to read 400 or 500 words? So, breaking it up with, so here, the COVID clarity, do what is meaningful, or what's the point? So we really got to the point of why you want a new year, new career, and so many candidates are turning to a mission-driven employment search. So, again, these subheadings just help to break it up. So, and then down here, you can't really see it too well, but we have quotes from other people who are independent from the company. And of course, we have a bio and a link about the company, and we have our photos and logos all in a Dropbox, also with the headshots from the founders. So you see, it's not very long. It's also not rocket science. Anyone can do this, but it does need to have these 10 components to be complete. Otherwise, it's just too much work. So it was hard to fit, obviously, an entire press release all in one place. So I kind of want to go over those here just so that everybody sees them. Okay. Don't not do the work. That's number 3. So we know who it's going to. We know we have to be prepared. Don't not do the work. Here are the details: release date and contact info, catchy headline and description, quote from founders, quote from other people who use the service, and any data that's pertinent, links to anything that you talk about, a subheading for the long releases, your company bio, logos, pictures. Keep it to 400 to 500 words because, attention span. And write according to the personality of the publication. So if you're writing for People magazine, it's going to be very different than if you're writing for Forbes. So I'll just use sort of an anecdotal thing, but watch it on the exclamation points, because not every press release really warrants, emojis or exclamation points or, so sometimes people will turn in releases to me and it'll say like, yeah, YA, no, or gonna, GONNA, or these sorts of things that we do when we speak quickly. That's just going to make the journalists have to go back and correct, and they don't have time for that. So, okay, that's number 3, going through our press release here with all of our details. And I believe that the Foodie Show is going to make this available to everybody so you can have this deck. Okay, so you've sent out your press release. You know who it's going to. You know that you have to be prepared. Now you know all the 10 details that you have to do in the release. You send it to them. You follow up once and then you stop. You can really only bug people so many times. So sometimes people follow up with me every 2 or 3 days, and that's really too much. So again, so much of press releases is about relationships with each of the journalists, and that's a lot of the reason why people hire PR firms, or that's why clients come to me with plant-powered consulting. It's the relationships that you have in the industry. It's also one press release. I'm sorry, this is going to be upsetting information for everybody. One press release is not enough. So you have to have a press strategy, and you have to go back and hit that press strategy every 6 weeks or so, like 4 to 6 weeks, I would say. Don't do a press release if you have nothing to say, but usually a thriving business, particularly a startup, is going to have new news every 4, 5, 6 weeks. So each press release fits into a long-term strategy, and that press strategy works in communication with the social media communication strategy, with the marketing strategy for any, point of sale tastings that you might have in a post-COVID world. Hopefully we'll get back to that. But whatever advertising campaigns you have going on, whatever product you have dropping on shelf, whatever D2C you're opening up on your website, all of this works together. So sometimes people come to me with a request, hey, could you do a press release for me? I really want this to kickstart my business. It's not enough. So you have to have these things in concert together. And again, that's another reason why people do hire, I'll say, plant-powered consulting or another agency, because anybody can do the press release themselves. You saw that one page thing, anyone can do that. You can follow that pretty clearly, but it's how it fits into the larger strategy. So you want to build those relationships, and that takes time. But one of the ways to kill the relationship is to bug people. Nobody likes that. So don't overpitch. Sometimes people will say, hey, can't we drop press releases every 2 weeks? Because then, if they don't pick it up in 2 weeks, then they'll pick up the next one 2 weeks later. Again, this kind of goes along with don't bug people. So that's too much. You have to have a balance. It has to be new news. Ultimately, you can't just either recycle the release. You can't do that. And you can't just not have news. So you really need to approach people only when there's news to say. But if you are on a schedule of, let's say, 4, 5, 6 weeks, every 4, 5, 6 weeks, that's a really healthy schedule. And you start to develop these relationships, not just with the journalist, but of course with the reader of those publications. And ultimately that's who you're trying to reach. So they get used to seeing you. And the more they see you, that's the more brand awareness you'll have, the more you'll develop that bespoke relationship with the consumer. We can talk about marketing another day, but in this world where no one trusts the big corporations and these small brands are king and they're really have a leg up on the big corporations, it's all about trust and developing that relationship. And the more you are in front of them with the same branding, with the same messaging consistently there every 6 weeks with your press, the stronger you're going to be. And when you're strong, you have success and you can be all over the place. And it's amazing how you can take that simple press release and how powerful that simple press release can be. And you can tailor it to speak to NBC or to speak to Time Out or to speak to the Wall Street Journal or to speak to the New York Post or to speak to Veg Economist or Veg News or, any of the plant-based publications, Food Business News, Food Navigator, so you just tweak it a little bit for each publication, and you might find yourself with lots of press in lots of different places, again, playing to that consistent branding and messaging that's constantly going out to the consumer. Okay, so I did touch on this before. So we went through the 5 things, and now we are back to some of the things you can do that you should be doing, and that is building those relationships. Again, you may not have time. You might be the founder who's in the lab and you're the science person, and so building PR relationships or journalist relationships aren't for you, and maybe you're not on LinkedIn and you're not hanging around. So then again, you really want to find, the right agency for you. But if you do have time for that kind of hanging out, then try to build those relationships. A friendly note should accompany every release. So it's always hard when you get a release and there's not something that says, "Hi, Elizabeth, I thought this might interest you because it touches on XYZ that Vegconomist has been talking a lot about." So, I'm much more keen to take that kind of release and give it some thought as to how I could fit it into the other stories that I have going on. Remember, whoever is doing that, the publication, whoever is handling the editorial content, they aren't just thinking about your release. They're thinking about how all the information fits together. And, of course, if you have breaking news, you go to the top of the list and you don't have to worry so much about fitting in with the other news of the day. But that person has a very busy job and they're thinking about that all the time. So, any kind of way you can stand out with a friendly note really helps. And you really have to find the right person. Again, this takes time, which is why people usually just say, "Hey, I'd like to have an agency do it for me," because I can hire that agency for something really short, like 3 months, and they can help me develop the relationships. They can get my strategy in order. They can do 1, 2, 3 releases for me, and then I'll be up and running. So a lot of people just decide that having an agency is more efficient because you can really get your press ball rolling, if you will, in 2 to 3 months with the right agency. Okay, now there is an exception to everything that I've said, and that is when I think of writing a release, it's really for news that's dropping. We have a new SKU, we have a new SKU coming out, we have a merger, we have a new raise, we have a new taste profile, we've redone our website. Even sometimes people do press releases for that. It's not major news, but they do that. But if you are asking Forbes to do a feature on your CEO, that's more of a relationship building, sending a small paragraph about the things that your CEO has done to break any kind of ceiling that there is, either through a product or through HR or whatever they're doing that is groundbreaking. And just a short paragraph to pitch the idea that any journalist would want to spend sometimes up to 3 weeks researching a long feature. So not something that's 400 to 500 words, but a long feature on you. And these are traditional journalist outlets that actually do pay their journalists. So we're not talking about digital outlets, which really don't do that anymore, but we're talking about New York Times or maybe Wired Magazine, this kind of thing, where they might be, I'll say, kick it old school, and they'll actually do the journalism work. They'll investigate, they'll research, they'll ask questions, and they'll do a feature. So those relationships are very exceptional, very hard to come by. Those journalists are few and far between, not very many of them anymore. Many of them freelance for many outlets. So the Wired magazine person might also write for Outdoor magazine and for Forbes, so there are very few of them. They are also spread very thin, very hard to get in touch with them. Again, the right consulting agency probably will have these relationships already, but you don't need a press release for that. That's all about building the relationship with the journalist and seeing if you can get them to buy into your POV and your hook. So this is, okay, that was all my stuff. And, I'd love to stay together. Again, I think the Foodeshow is going to make this available to everybody long term. But, any questions, of course, just come find me on LinkedIn. It's where I hang out the most, although Clubhouse is a new one for me. But really, LinkedIn is my go-to for business. And there's my website and my email, so you can do those as well. And I hope that you'll subscribe to the Plant-Based Business Hour. I'd love to have you there as well. We do incredible interviews with CEOs and really the leaders of the plant-based movement. But when I'm not doing the Plant-Based Business Hour or the Plant-Based Business Minute or the Plant-Based Business Breakfast, I'm doing plant-powered consulting. And that keeps me really, really busy. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if there's a way to I don't know if Huda has any questions or if I can answer any questions for anyone. And of course, you can always reach out to me personally. So this might be the end. This might be because we're taped. So this might be where I say, hey, I hope you do reach out to me. You did see all of my contact information there. ElysabethAlfano.com. That's a great way. Or Elysabeth Alfano on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to, give some tips and some pointers. You can always refer back to this deck. And even though my consulting agency does much more than press, but people usually start with press with me because they see me on the Plant-Based Business Hour and they see the work that I do for Veg Economist magazine through my consulting agency. So they think of me as press only. And then usually what happens is they hire me for press and then they just have me stick around because I have so much business background from my history that I end up doing marketing and overall business strategy. But it all starts with press. And I'm happy to help anyone, big or small, with press if that's something that you'd like to do. So hopefully I answered all your questions. And I want to thank again the Foodie Show and everybody for being with me here today.